to build the nation's might, and the army goes rolling along. Proud of all we have done.
Today is May 11th, 2010. I'm James Turner at the Warhawk Air Museum in Nampa, Idaho. Today I'll be interviewing Raymond Marlin Paine for our Veterans History Project in partnership with the Library of Congress. Today the camera operator is Jeff Neal. Excuse me. Welcome, Marlin, to the Warhawk. We're happy to have you. If you wouldn't, sir, please state your full name, address, and birth date.
Raymond Marlin Paine. I was born in Caldwell, Idaho, 1924, on the 24th date. Okay.
And your address?
At present address is 15498 South Montana Avenue in Caldwell. 83607.
All right, and the branch of military in which you served and what years you served, Marlin?
Okay, I was in the infantry division, the 69th Infantry Division. I think my training with the 278th Training Battalion in Camp Roberts, California. I was inducted in 1945, and we had probably 2 months of training.
Okay, and the branch of military in which you served?
The infantry, 69th Infantry Division.
Okay, and the years you served?
1944.
Okay.
46 through 46.
Excellent.
Summer of 46.
All right, Marlin, again, on behalf of the Warhawk Air Museum and the Veterans History Project, we're happy you're here today. Why don't we start out with where you were born and raised?
I was born in Caldwell, Idaho, on August 24th, 1924.
Mm-hmm. Did you attend school in Caldwell?
No, I attended Marsing. They had high school out there at that time.
What did your family do for a living at that time?
We were farmers.
Mm-hmm. Did you have brothers and sisters?
I had one brother and one sister.
Right.
And brother also farmed.
Mm-hmm. Did you attend high school? You say you attended high school all the way up
yes.
in Marsing?
I graduated in 43.
Right. What was life like in Marsing at that time, or in Caldwell at that time?
Well, it's not near as populated as it is now. Mm-hmm. I don't know if there's much difference in the people themselves. We're all pretty friendly.
Sure.
Of course, we had affiliation with the schools, and we got to know the different athletes. But
did you play sports in high school?
yes, I played football and baseball.
Right.
Attempted basketball.
Right.
But
it didn't work out?
No.
What'd you do for fun in Marsing when you weren't doing athletics or working?
Well, we had table tennis tournament during the winter months. We enjoyed playing table tennis, and we didn't have any special activity, just school activities, really.
Mm-hmm.
So
did you fish on the Snake at all? Or fish in that country?
Occasionally, yes.
Yeah. Were you were still in high school when Pearl Harbor was attacked?
Yes.
Right. How did that impact you as a young man in the early 1940s?
Well, I didn't think it would affect me, because I remember I was out in the front yard kicking up piles of leaves, and Dad came out and said they attacked Pearl Harbor. Well, okay, so that's at that time, and I think I was a sophomore in high school at that time.
Right. So as the war wore on,
Mm-hmm.
you likely started to recognize some fellow students and other people you knew in the community in Caldwell and Marsing. They were heading off to war.
Yeah.
Did it start to dawn on you eventually that there was a real possibility that you were going to be called at one time?
Well, in my innermost thoughts, I would like to have been called. So
Yeah.
I wanted to go to the service, but I felt I was obligated to stay on the farm and help
Sure.
produce the food. So
Right. Because again, that's a juxtaposition, especially for a lot of kids from rural Western communities. Many were turned away because of their expertise on the farm, or in the woods cutting logs or anything like that might go to the war effort. So you graduated high school in 43.
Yes.
What did you, after high school, did you just continue to work on the farm then?
Yes. my brother and I took a mechanics training school in Caldwell in the evenings. And my brother loved that, but I detested. I didn't like mechanics. So I didn't want to be a mechanic, I knew that.
Right, right. What did the farm raise?
Oh, general farming. We had sugar beets, alfalfa, and small grains, some corn, onions, just a variety of farm produce.
Sure, sure. Was your brother older or younger?
Yeah, he was a couple of years older than I was.
Right, right. Did he serve in the military?
No,
as
he
well?
didn't.
He stayed home.
Yeah.
When did you were you drafted?
Yes.
When did you get your draft notice?
Probably early August, I think it was.
August of '44.
Yes.
Did you know anybody personally? Did you have any cousins or friends or anyone like that you knew had already shipped out and were?
Well, I had some good friends from high school, and I'd lost a couple of them. One was in the submarines, and their submarine was lost.
Mm-hmm.
He was too, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And that's about
Right.
ones I knew. Some of my friends had joined up. Yes.
Right. So August of '44, D-Day had already occurred. We had the United States Army and the Allies had a foothold in France at this time. Where were you indoctrinated then?
I entered in at Fort Douglas, Utah.
Mm-hmm.
That was my induction area.
Right. What was the last thing you did before you left home?
Well, I bid my mother and dad goodbye.
Of course.
So I remember prior to the getting my induction papers, we were stacking second crop of hay. I was driving a team of horses.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the fellas in the field say, "Marlin, would you bring me out the water sack? I'd like to have a drink of water." So not thinking, I put that water sack on the horse's collar. And he thought he had a sore neck. The horse thought he had a sore neck. So off he went. I remember that just like yesterday.
Right.
So he went out of the field, up the road, in the yard. And the slip behind him was swinging around, hit the garage and broke the double trees.
Oh,
and
no.
so
What did your father say?
I don't know his dad said much, but I told my mother, I said, I just assumed my induction papers were here today. She handed me the paper.
Ah, really?
So I remember that.
Gotcha. How did you feel once you had those papers in your hand? Did your psyche change at all? Did you just think, okay, were you ready to move on? It sounds like.
Well, I thought it was a challenge. I didn't have big aspirations of solving the war. I was just doing what I was called to do.
So there was some lag time between your high school graduation and when you got your induction papers. So you just worked on the farm that whole time. Were you expecting this to happen?
Well, I wanted to join,
Mm-hmm.
and so I think in the year I went up to northern Idaho and worked in what they call blister rush, cleaning up the forest so there wouldn't be a big forest fire,
Sure.
clean the forest up. And I was up there about 3 months and came on home.
Right.
So
So I assume you took a train from Boise to Fort Douglas?
I left from Nampa here.
Napa, right. Do you recall the plane? Were there a lot of other soldiers who were going to Fort Douglas to be inducted?
I don't really remember. There was one fella from Homedale I knew slightly, Kingsley. I'm not sure of the name even now,
Mm-hmm.
but he was down there also at the same time.
So upon arriving in Fort Douglas, how did that all shake out? When you got there, what happened? You recall?
Well, I don't really recall. Just waiting in the line to get our shots and vaccinations, and nothing out of the ordinary. I did see a couple of guys pass out because they weren't used to having a shot.
Right.
So for some reason, it didn't seem to bother me. So I didn't affect me health-wise or anything like that.
So after Fort Douglas, where did you head for basic?
Camp Roberts, California. That's close to St. Louis Obispo.
Mm-hmm.
And
Did you as you were going into basic training, did you have any understanding of what outfit you'd be placed with, or whether you'd be going to the Pacific or the? Did you have any preferences as to going to the Pacific or going to Europe? Did it matter?
I think I had a preference going to Europe. I didn't really want to go to the Pacific, and I don't know what determined where we went or anything like that. I know a couple of guys in our training battalion went over to the Pacific.
Right.
But just by luck of the draw, I guess I went over to Europe.
How long was the basic training?
Well, we were supposed to have 16 weeks, and ended up at 12, I believe it was. And they pulled us off of training because that was when the Battle of the Bulge, the Germans started their last big push. And so they took us what they called a delay en route furlough, and we left Santa Maria Airport and flew up here to Boise, and CN-47 boxcars.
Right, C-47. Yeah.
And we were here for 10 days. And I can't tell you what I did in the meantime.
Right. Did you get it back to Caldwell at all when you were here on the furlough?
Oh, yes. Yeah. Well, that time only that time, that 10-day furlough.
Sure.
I came back and visited some of the kids that I'd known in high school.
Right.
And
so from there, once that's over, where was your port of embarkation on your way to Europe then?
Okay. We flew over to Little Rock, Arkansas, and the weather had closed in, so they said we're going to have to land and take you guys on in by train. And so I don't know whether we stayed overnight there or what, but then we were on the train for a day or two and landed in Fort Meade, Maryland. Yeah, Fort Meade, Maryland. That was supposed to be our debarkation point.
Did you understand at that time that you'd be going to the 272nd Infantry in the 69th? You didn't know at that time?
No, I had no idea.
Was it like a replacement depot or something like
yes,
that?
It
where
was,
you went?
yeah.
Gotcha. What was the journey across the ocean to the United Kingdom like then?
Well, they usually went over in convoys for protection, but we went over in the LD France. It was a luxury liner converted over for troop carrier, and it was one of the larger ships at that time. I think it was what they call a four-stacker. I think went over by itself because, as my understanding, they were faster than the subs were at that time. So I think we made it in 3 days.
Right. What was life like on the ship?
Well, we had a lot of free time.
Yeah.
Played cards and learned to play blackjack, and
they were just full of GIs, huh?
Yeah.
Right. What's your thought process at that time for a 20-something-year-old kid who's, you're going to the war zone at this point. Did it dawn on you again at this point as you were making your way across the Atlantic that things again, you were getting that much closer to the war?
I don't believe I thought too much about it. It just because I wasn't the only one. All of us were in the same predicament.
Right.
And so we just accepted our lot in life, so to speak.
Mm-hmm. So, where did you land in the United Kingdom?
Okay, over in Glasgow, Scotland.
Right.
Okay. From there, we went by train to New Hampshire, not New Hampshire.
Somewhere in England, maybe?
Yes, I can't think where that place was. And then from there, we went to Southampton, and that was our departation point to go over to the war zone.
Right. So even by this time, as you're leaving Southampton and you're getting ready to cross the Channel to go to France, you still hadn't been assigned an outfit yet. You still.
No, that's right.
No?
Yeah.
Where did you land in France?
At Le Havre.
Right. As you stepped down to the French soil, was it just military all over the place? Is the military going full force at this time?
Well, I don't remember. I don't really remember even the natives over there. I don't don't remember them a whole lot. Because, you know, you're with a group of soldiers, and that's...
Sure. So once you're in France, how long does it take before you are assigned to your regiment, your battalion, your regiment?
Well, they board us on these 48 boxcars. I'm sure you've heard of those.
Mm-hmm.
As I recall, there was 28 of us and our duffel bags on these cars. And I think we were in them 2 to 3 days, day and night. And we didn't have any heat other than body heat, you know.
Yeah, because it's a winter time. If the
Yeah.
Battle of Bulge just
Yeah.
went on, it's
Yeah.
full on winter in
Yeah.
Europe. Did they issue any equipment once you got to France? Did they start issuing your? They had probably issued you all your gear in England then at that point.
Pretty
right?
much so, yeah.
So what sort of gear do they issue you as you're prepared to go into the battle zone?
Well, of course, they give us our rifles, M1,
Mm-hmm.
and that was a usual weapon we carried.
Mm-hmm.
Few of them had a pistol, but not many of us.
Mm-hmm.
And
Steel pot and all that sort of stuff. Your mess tins and everything
oh
that you
yeah,
need.
that yeah we had, and they issued us heavier boots, heavier
Sure.
shoes. Yeah,
Probably a nice jacket or a great coat maybe.
we had a overcoat, I guess.
Overcoat, yeah.
But those things I don't remember too much about.
Right.
Just going around in that 48 boxcars and through a French town, and here everybody's reaching for a handout.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
How long were you on the? So you say you were on the train for about 2 or 3 days.
It seems like that.
Okay. Where from Le Havre? Where did you go from there? Then where did you get off the train?
I don't remember what village or what town it was.
Right. So when the train finally stopped, then is that when you went to the replacement depot in France and got lined out with your outfit? What's this protocol for that?
We never went to a depot. I just, well, all I remember is they put us on these GI trucks, rode in the back of the GI truck, several of us.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, at night, we did it all traveling at night because it was all blackout situation. And we didn't know any idea where we were going or what outfit. And I know we were going up some hills, around some curves, but then we got into France and over into Belgium,
Right.
got into the Aragon's forest, and I've never seen it so black as I did over there.
Right.
And
I mean, what's going through your mind at this time? I mean, you're in this situation and you kind of,
there's no way to get out of it.
yeah, you're in that pickle. I guess that's a pretty good attitude, ever forward, huh?
Yeah.
So in the middle of the night, do you recall the series of events that happened then once you kind of got to where you were supposed to be going?
Well, we got to the top or wherever we were going. I don't know what mountain or what, it seemed like a top of mountain.
Mhm.
But they said, okay, now you guys, you've got individual pup tents. Okay, you find a couple trees that are close together, and you erect your tent, well, one of you to a pup tent. And that's all, you're not allowed to have any light or anything.
Yeah.
And he said if anybody lights a cigarette, they can see it from distance away. They know there's troops there. So,
Yeah.
of course, we obeyed that. And
Sure.
when I got up in the morning, I was within 5 or 6 foot of a dead German paratrooper.
Right.
And
So you wake up the next morning, you walk out of your pup tent, and there is a corpse there of an enemy soldier. Did you have like a moment of clarity, or did anything just kind of did it shock you into understanding that exactly that you were not in Marsing or not in Caldwell anymore?
yeah.
Right?
Well,
I mean, what goes through your mind for a 20-year-old kid who sees a dead body lying there?
well, I was sure it wasn't all one of our troops.
Mhm.
And I felt a little joy because it was one of the Germans.
Sure,
And we've been taught that we're fighting the Germans.
of course.
So then I was put on a grave digging detail, and so we had to dig a grave for it.
Right.
Whether it was for him, for another paratrooper, I don't know, don't recall.
So was it an encampment then? What was the installation like in the Ardennes at that time during the Battle of Bulge in Belgium in that forested area? What was the location? Was it a camp, an established camp, or was it more of a bivvy sort of a situation? Or?
Yeah, I don't think there was a group meeting or anything like that. We just I don't even recall being assigned to a certain outfit.
Mm-hmm.
They said you're part of the 101st Airborne Division. Your replacements for such and such a division. So that's all I remember at that time.
Right. So when is the first when was the first time that you were made aware of the fact that you were in the 69th Infantry Division then? Did it come a day later? Did it come weeks later? Were you ever told this? When did it ever dawn on you? When did you meet some of these other soldiers you were going to be serving with in the 272nd? Do you recall?
Boy, that's a good question.
I mean, how many days were you digging ditches in this place or digging graves before someone snapped you up and said, all right, let's go, or grab your gear?
I couldn't tell you. I just don't know. I don't.
So how long were you in Belgium when you woke up that first day? Do you recall how long you were in that locale before you were moved on down the line or moved somewhere?
No, I think we kept moving. I know we went to a village, St. Vis, Belgium.
Summit, yeah.
And all I could see standing was a church steeple on top of the hill. All the other buildings seemed to me were flat.
There was a major battle fought there during the Battle of Bulge. Yeah.
And during all these travels in the 48 boxcars, I froze my feet, or not frozen, badly frostbitten.
Mm.
And it was getting difficult to walk around, so they put me back into the kitchen because they were shorthanded. They needed somebody on KP
Right.
and keep me out of the damp weather quite so much.
Mm-hmm.
And so I remember the first night that I was back in the kitchen, or back in the area where the kitchen is established, and I slept on an army cot. Man, I thought that was luxury, because I've been sleeping in a foxhole, or in the dugouts.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that, I remember that, I thought that bed I had there, if it was a bed, was luxury. I really thought that was great.
So was it a field kitchen? Was it an established field kitchen, like in a big tent, or what? Did you choose somewhere within one of these villages or one of these communities where you could have access to cooking facilities?
Well, we carried the kitchen, so to speak, carried their own cooking utensils with them.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't very often that they could get a place that was already established kitchen. So they had to, just like you on a bivouac or anything like that, you carry your provisions with you.
Sure. So you were doing, what sort of duties did you do in this kitchen then? Because if you're at Saint-Vith, you're probably not too far from the front.
Well, that's right. Peeled potatoes and
Mm-hmm.
did the dishes, what I could on it, And one of the duties that we had was take the food up to the troops, which is about a mile, maybe a mile and a half up ahead. Have to do it after dark or do it early in the morning before daybreak. So that was one of the responsibilities I had.
So were you feeding like squad size, platoon size, an entire company at one time? How many soldiers ate at one time?
Probably squad size.
Squad?
Yeah.
What sorts of foods did you cook? I mean, I can imagine, you can probably attest to this too, that in that cold weather, eating food out of a ration box probably paled in comparison to a warm meal.
Well, they tried to cook, that's what we're taking up, hot food for them. I don't recall what the food was, probably a beef stew or, something like that. And try to keep it hot so we got to the front. So
Sure.
I didn't look at each pot to see if it's still hot. I didn't do that.
Sure. I mean, so these soldiers are pretty much at the front then, or a rear area
Yes.
near the front then. Were you ever exposed to any combat at that time as you were moving forward or moving the food? Were you?
Well, we'd hear the artillery shells going overhead.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember one evening, a good friend of mine searched me out after he'd gone through the mess line, and he said, "I'd like to talk to you, Marlon." He said, "I'm due to go on the squad in the morning," and he said, "I don't think I've signed up on my insurance, renewed it." Oh, I said, "You'll be okay. You're all right." Well, he was one of the guys that was killed that night, and so he's from what part? He's from Idaho, up north a little ways. Trying to think of the name, I can't get it now.
Right.
But anyway,
Sure.
felt real bad about that, and I think there were 3 or 4 guys were wounded that night, but he was the only one killed.
Right.
So.
You stated we have a combat history here too, and I think this is probably a good place to segue, and we'll kind of get an understanding of the 272nd Infantry Regiment. You indicate that you were in the headquarters company, I think, of the 2nd Battalion, was it?
Yeah.
Right?
Mm-hmm.
And the 69th Infantry was again very much like a regular infantry division in that it had 3 rifle regiments, along with all the other attached regimental stuff.
Companies, yeah.
Right. I'm going to show a couple photos here real quick. And this again is something that is unique to the 69th. Most divisions and regiments within these divisions had their own artists and people who portrayed life within a division and the way they saw it. So the first one I'm going to show is a real nice painting done by a GI from within the Battle Axe Regiment, the 273rd Infantry. And you can see this, again, is a stylized version of GIs, making an assault. And of course they sport the 6 and the 9 as well as the Battle Axe insignia on the side of their steel pots. Is the divisional commander of the 69th Infantry with the letter dated June 6, 1945 from the headquarters of the 69th to the officers and men of the 272nd Infantry. This is at the end of the war, and it basically highlights with the cessation of hostilities in the European theater, it's most fitting that we review the superb accomplishments of the 272nd Infantry. Your splendid regiment has smoothly and efficiently carried out every assigned mission from the date this division entered the line to the final and utter collapse of the German army. Your high esprit and fighting spirit have measured up to my highest expectations. I extend to the officers and enlisted men of the 272nd Infantry my heartiest congratulations and praise for a job well done from E.F. Reinhardt, who runs the show, the general. So again, I think this sheds a little light on the accomplishments of the 69th and where they served, and we'll kind of move on from here. So eventually the Battle of the Bulge, that time and that part of Belgium ends.
Germany.
So from there you start moving east towards the German frontier, is that correct?
Yes.
Did you pretty much stay in the field kitchen as you moved?
Pretty much so, yeah. Taking the food up to the troops, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That was part of my duty. I learned to cook when I was in there.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's only maybe 5 of us that were in the kitchen at that time.
Right. So do you recall then, if this was a field kitchen, were you pretty much handling a company or a squad, a platoon within a company within the 2nd Battalion then?
Pretty much so, yeah.
Yeah. So you probably fed the same soldiers pretty regularly then, right?
Yes.
Did you get to know any of those soldiers
Well,
in the companies in 2nd Battalion?
As I stated a moment ago, one of my best friends was killed when he went on in squad that evening, one evening.
Mm-hmm.
And I think they had a squad of maybe 5 or 6, I think, and they were ambushed. And,
right. So as you started to move east, Marlon, did you start to get? I mean, by this time we're talking the spring of 1945 or winter / spring of 45. Did you get the sense that the war was starting to come to a halt somehow? Did you get the sense that that Germany was on their last legs and ready to crumble?
Yeah, we were moving pretty fast
Mm-hmm.
on it. We'd take over several villages in one day. And we knew it that they were backpedaling as fast as they could.
Sure. So you mentioned the Siegfried Line earlier.
Mm-hmm.
Do you recall crossing the Siegfried Line into Germany then? And
No, I don't.
it just sort of happened as
Yeah.
you moved
Yeah,
east?
I don't remember a definite line. No, I don't remember.
Right. So what was your day-to-day like at this time then? I mean, were you still able to sleep on a cot in the kitchen as you moved forward, or
no.
you slept in a hole like the rest of the
Well, all depends. Some villages we took over, the accommodations were real good. I remember one motel we took over, the beds were pillows, soft as pillows. I thought that was something. So anyway, it all depends where we were. I remember we captured a village, and just outside the village was a large barn. It had 3 different levels in the barn. You don't see those type of barns here. And there were some Germans clear up on top, German soldiers on top, and our mess hall was down on the bottom level. And so
they hadn't surrendered yet.
No.
Yet they were still in. Did they eventually surrender? How did you root those guys out? Did they smell your cooking and say,
well, I think they must have smelled.
Get on the chow line too?
Smelled my cooking.
Yeah, they said, comrade, yeah. Friend.
One morning I went down to, to put the food on the chow line, and here a couple German soldiers came around the edge of the building, hands up like that. And I didn't have a rifle on me or anything, but there was this stack of rifles sitting over here. I grabbed one just to make it show them I had a rifle.
Mm-hmm.
Turned out it was a German rifle.
It's probably their rifle.
So turned them over at the MPs right away.
Mm-hmm.
So
as you were in that part of Europe more and you're starting to move east, did you have more contact with POWs as you started to move east? Did you have more contact with German soldiers who were ready to throw in the towel? Do you recall?
Yeah, not so much as we had with civilians
Mm-hmm.
on it.
So how did you interpret the civilians you were seeing that had been living in this war zone for what amounted to about 4 years?
I think they were glad to see that the war was over with. They were glad to see the American soldier. And at that time, after the war had ended and had a depot established there, we had some folks that worked in the kitchen were ex-SS troopers,
Mm-hmm.
and you could tell they were pretty belligerent at that time. But generally speaking, most of the people are pretty nice.
Right. So. Also, as we learn about the story of the 272nd, here's a thing I wanted to show too, and it's kind of a large map. Is that going to be okay, Jeff? I can stop again if you like. Did that pretty quick.
That's about as good as it's going to get.
Okay, but this thing again is another stylized map created by regimental artists, people who fought in the Battle Axe Division or were likely came along with the regiment as it crossed, and you can see the ship leaving Southampton, Portsmouth, that neck of England, coming to Le Havre, and then moving east from there, and you can see it. There's actually a photo of the train as you moved east into France, and then it tracks the Battle Axe Division as it moves north up into Belgium, eventually ending in Liège, and then they start to move east again through Malmedy, Saint-Vith, Dahlem, places where there were major battles during the war. And then you finally cross the Siegfried Line at Dahlem into Germany, and you can see where the division, or where this regiment, where the 272nd moved to Kassel, and then eventually ending up in Leipzig, where not too far out of there in Torgau, the 272nd was one of the first regiments to actually get in touch with the Russians.
Yeah, we're okay.
Okay, here's another picture that was created by, again, the art department in the 69th Division that indicates you're now entering Leipzig through the courtesy of the 69th Infantry Division. And there's one more photo here that I'd like to show. There's just tons of really, really interesting pictures in this book, but there was a specific photo right here. Again, the 69th Infantry is known for being the first to meet the Russians in Germany. So we see all sorts of these cool propaganda paintings and photos. East meets West. The American flag right alongside the hammer and sickle. And then here's a really good photo too. The last one we'll show at Torgau. And you can see soldiers of a different regiment within the division meeting the Russians. You have American officers on one side, on the left, coming from the west, and Russian officers and soldiers coming from the east. So again, the 69th Infantry and all their ordeals and endeavors as they crossed Europe were amongst the first GIs to meet the Russians. Did you, at that time, as you started to move east to Kassel, do you recall these German cities as you moved forward with the regiment?
No, not really. I have one in mind where we established our depot, Bad Nauheim. If you could show it there on your map.
You know, give me one second here.
It's a small village.
So as the division, or as the regiment starts to make its way west or east to meet the Russians, how did you feel once you realized the war was over? I mean, did you recognize the destruction in these German cities as you moved east, Marlon?
I didn't realize how bad it was, though. But I didn't think what the battle they'd have to reconstruct those buildings. I just didn't dawn on me the destruction that was made and the effect it would have on the people. To relate it to our own situation, I couldn't visualize that.
Right.
So,
I mean, the entire country had to be rebuilt.
Yeah.
Wow. So do you recall when you entered Leipzig? Then do you recall any major cities towards the end of the campaign before the war as you started to move? You mentioned Bad Nauheim earlier before. What significance did that city have then?
Well, that's where we'd finally ended up and made that a gathering point for the soldiers that are due to go home on rotation, on a furlough. And so we were based there quite a while after the war. Mm-hmm. And so that's where we said we had a large building there and a mess hall there and a pretty much established area.
Right. So at the end of the war, you were in Bad Nauheim and you didn't move too much. That was your post at that time.
Yeah.
So as these soldiers rotated from the east, starting to move back west again, how long did you do that before the war actually ended?
Well, when we established the depots, so to speak, the war was over.
It was over.
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So how did that make you feel? Did you think you might have to go to the Pacific when the war ended in Europe?
Well, I hope not.
Right.
So really didn't think about it. I really didn't. I was just wanting to get home when it was over with.
Right. What was life like then when you finally get to the end of the line and this depot was established? Did your quarters become better? I imagine everybody pretty much slept inside for the most part at that time.
Yeah, we had our own warehouse. It was a warehouse, and there were facilities, rooms that they'd used previous to that. They may have used it for their own troops. Germans might have used it for their own troops. I don't know.
So did the meals did they change once the kitchen was established? Did the meals change?
Yeah.
In what way?
Well, we had beef. We had ham. I remember we had to debone some ham. After it had been cooked, we'd cooked it and getting it ready for the troops. I remember setting it on the mess hall, and we had good supplies, good food.
What did you do when you weren't on post or when you weren't on duty? Did you have an opportunity to explore the surrounding area while you were there?
No, I don't think so. I didn't have any, you might say, free time. In the evening we're free, but we didn't go off our base at that time.
You just pretty much stayed on the post then most of the time. So how long were you in Germany after the war before you got before you were able to start heading home?
Well, the war was over with, the 6th of May?
May of 45, yeah.
And I spent most of that fall over there around Bad Neuheim, and I got home in the following year in 46 and in June or July, I'm not sure where it was now.
So did the 69th or the in the regiments within the 69th Infantry, were you an occupational army basically at that time?
Pretty much so, but I don't remember them disbanding the 69th Division. I don't remember when that was done. I just don't.
So by the time you were ready to come home, the 272nd still stayed there, though. There were still soldiers in the 69th in Germany.
Yeah, but I don't think we had any real identifications of the 272nd Regiment. I don't remember some of those things.
No, that's okay. So do you recall when you were given the okay to come home, what was that train trip like back across Europe then?
Well, prior to that, can we go back just a little bit?
Sure, of course.
Okay. They gave us a choice. You can have a 2-week vacation going up to Denmark and Sweden, or you can take that and go home. Oh, man, I want to go home. I wish I'd taken that vacation to see that country over there. But anyway, we did come home, and we were on what they called the Liberty ships coming home. I think 3,500 troops to a ship or something like that. And
what was the attitude like on the ship? I mean, were the GIs obviously were pretty excited to be getting home? Yeah. So you crossed the channel back to Britain, back to England. So you get on a Liberty ship. Did you get on the Liberty ship in Scotland again? Or did they have to move you across the United Kingdom to get you to Scotland? Or did you leave from?
Well, I'd like to trace some of those steps. I don't really remember.
Right.
I don't think I was in a daze. I just don't remember.
Right. Where did you land back in the States then when the war was complete?
Well, I remember going into the harbor at New York, but I don't remember.
Do you recall what you did when you got to the New York City? Did you stay in New York City for any extended amount of time, or did you pretty much just make your way west?
Got on the train to come home.
Right. Is there anything that you can remember that happened while you were in Belgium or Germany as the 272nd went east? Is there any other thing you'd like to relate to us about your time there?
No, not really. It's except some of the times when I was taking food up to troops. One evening, it was all blackout, and the mountain on the side were real one-lane highways, one-lane roads, and we heard a lot of thunder. Not thunder, but sound like somebody running. And so we're ready. I got my rifle up. Bunch of deer.
Excellent. So as you made as you're on your way back to Idaho, when did you leave the Army? Did you have to stay in a little bit? Did you have any idea that you weren't going to go to the Pacific after that?
No.
You just kind of roll with it and hope for the best, or?
Yeah, I'm not sure. We weren't in New York very long.
Do you recall when you got back to Nampa and we're starting to head, when you realized you were home, do you recall the feeling after having been gone for so long? Do you recall the feeling when you got home? Or did your father give you a horse and a plow and say, get to work?
No. No, I was so happy to get home and see the folks I knew, and
Mm-hmm.
so
Not long after you probably got home, the bombs were dropped in Japan,
mhm.
and the war was over for good. What did you do after the war then? When you discharged from the army, what did you do?
Okay, I worked on the farm that summer, and then I went to college. Went to college for a year.
Where'd you go to school?
At College of Idaho at Caldwell.
Oh, excellent.
And so
What did you study?
general arts.
Right. Did you after you went to school for a little while? What did you end up doing?
Went back to farming. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Did you work the same spot where you grew up, or did you get your own place?
Well, I worked somewhat on the farm at Marsing, and then there was some ground that opened up there by the lake. They called it desert claim entry, and veterans had preference to stake a claim on that. So my dad was also a World War I veteran, and I was the veteran, so we took out a desert claim entry of 250 acres out by Lake Lowell, and we took all the sagebrush off and made it into a productive farm. So
Excellent.
that was fun.
Did you have family? Did you?
Yes.
Mhm.
I met my wife when we went to college, and we were married in 1948.
Mhm. So Marlon, is there anything else you'd like to share with us about your time before or during or after the war?
Well, after the war, of course, I worked on the farm for 6 months or 4 months until the fall term of college started, and met my wife, future wife, there at the College of Idaho in 47.
Did you?
Must have been in 46. Met her in 46. So we were married in 48.
Did you keep in any contact with anybody that you served with during the war?
No, I didn't.
No, you just didn't.
Just-
Did you know any other soldiers? Did you come across any other soldiers in your travels in Idaho that had also served during the war? Did you meet anybody in VFW or anything like that you knew?
Well, some, but we never did talk much about the service.
Sure.
I didn't get involved in the veterans group. Why, I don't know. I guess I was too busy farming.
Yeah, I was going to say farming's kind of one of those jobs where I know it's pretty much 24 hours a day a lot of the time.
I was too busy raising my own farm.
Uh-huh.
Like somebody said, we had five youngsters.
You have 5 kids?
Yeah,
Right.
four girls and a boy.
Right. Did they stay on the farm?
No, they've kind of dispersed. We have our son, youngest, they worked with me for a few years farming, and then he sold his farm equipment and bought a truck. Now he's a long distance hauler.
Mm-hmm.
And of course we have 2 girls that are teachers, and one is in the abstract title business, and what's the other name? The other is was a director of the YMCA in California, one of the counties. But so
Excellent.
we-
Very good. Well, I guess on that note, this is probably as good a place as any to end. So on behalf of Jeff and myself, the Veterans History Project, the Library of Congress, and the Warhawk, we would like to thank you, Marlon, again for coming to the museum today to share your experiences in 272nd, the Battle Axe Regiment. And we look forward to the next time our paths cross.
Okay, it's been a pleasure.